We're going to be looking at practice exercise 6.18 plus scores and the best way to do it. So we want to write a static method named plusScores. It's going to accept as a parameter a scanner containing a series of lines that represent student records. So I'm going to actually do this in IntelliJ. That way we can kind of debug it and see the methodology behind it. So going pretty in depth just to make sure we understand everything. Let's create our method first. So it's going to be public. We know it's a static method. And then it's going to be of type void, I believe, because it's just going to be printing something. It's called plusScores, and we're taking in a scanner, and we can just call this line. So we have scanner line, and we're going to be in here. We have an error, and that's because we need to import the scanner class. Pretty easy just to do that. We don't have to do that inside of here, but we are going to just do that inside of our IntelliJ, our Eclipse, whatever IDE you're using. So we write this static method named plusScores accepts as a parameter a scanner containing a series of lines that represent student records. Each student record takes up 2 lines of input. The first line has the student's name and the second line has a series of plus and minus characters. So we have basic sample input right here. The number of plus minus characters will vary, but we should assume that each one character appears and at least one will appear on the second line and no other characters will appear. This is just telling us about the other kind of conditions and rules that we're going to have to follow. We want our output to look like the following right here. And so what we're going to do is just simply code for this. Now I'm doing this in IntelliJ again, just so we can really go through and understand everything. The important part is the fact that we are going to make a main class that is going to send this to our method. So that way we can debug it. It makes everything easier, and that's actually the way I solve for it. So we're going to want to make a public static void main class here. And then all that we need to do is do like a string temp is equal to. We can copy all of this from here and then just paste it inside of this string like this. Super easy. IntelliJ gives us the new lines for each new line. So that's pretty good. We don't have to do anything there. That's what it should look like. And then we are going to pass this into a scanner. So we'll do scanner. We'll call this scan and we'll set it equal to a new scanner where we pass in our temp. And then we're going to push this to our method. So we'll do plusScores and we're going to pass in our scan. So we're passing this in here. Now, what we're going to want is, remember, we have these lines of input right here, right? And what we're going to want to do is we're going to go through this entire thing. And if we want to go through an entire like file or scan, whatever, we'll just do a while loop. And we're going to run this while loop while our lines dot has next line. So we're running this until we have no more lines left. And then all we're going to do is just a system.out.print, not print line. And the reason why it's a print is because if we look at this output, we're going to want all of this on one line. So the first thing that we need to print is just the name, right? It's pretty simple. So we're just going to do system.out.println, and we're going to print this whole line right here, and then we're just going to tack on this colon right here and then a space. So it's pretty simple so far. We're just going to do lines, inside of our parentheses we'll do lines dots, and then next line, so we get the next line, that's a string. And then we can append to this the colon that we want. So we'll have our colon here, like this, and then we'll have a space afterwards. So that's our print line just like that. Now, after we do this, we are going to want to do a for loop that runs through and calculates the length of this. The simplest way that I can think of to do it is to take this as a string and then compare each of these characters in our string. And if it's a plus, we are going to increment a plus kind of counter. And every single time we run this, we are going to increment a counter. And so we can divide it and get a percentage. If we want it to look like this, we're going to have to store it in a double. So we'll do double, we'll do total is equal to 0. And we'll also have a plus, which is equal to 0. So those are 2 variables. We're going to also have our string variable that's going to have that next line. So string, and we'll do C lines, and that'll stand for current lines, is equal to lines dot next line. So what we've done here is we take this line and we get this whole thing. Now we want this whole next line that we've gotten in here. Now we're going to compare the characters, and we're going to do this in a for loop. So we'll do for int a is equal to 0. That's just the starting point. And we're going to run this as long as a is less than our c lines dot length. So we're going to get the length of this entire line, and then we're just going to increment our a so we can eventually break out of here. Inside of our for loop, we are going to, remember, every single time we run this, we want to increment our total. So we'll do total plus plus. And actually, another thing that we could do is instead of saying int a is equal to 0 right here, we can get rid of this and see if this works. So we'll do ints, we'll do nothing there, and instead we'll do total like this. I just had this idea off the top of my head, and then we'll increment total like this. So it will increment every single time just that way. And then inside of this for loop, we'll have an if statement. So if, and this is where we compare our pluses. So if our current lines, so C lines dot, and we'll get the char at the specific index, total index. If char at this index is equal to the character plus, then that's pretty much it. Char at, oh, there's an issue here. We actually can't do this, and the reason why we can't do this is because this is double, and this takes an index value, I believe. So required type is index. I believe we could cast this as an int, so we could try doing that, but it might be easier just to revert it. Okay, so we can try doing this and see if this works. So if this is the case, all we want to do is do plus, and then just increment that. So that should be it. Once we break out of this for loop, all we're going to want to do is print our information. So we'll have a sysout statement right here. We're going to want to take our amount of pluses and then divide it by the total. And then we're just going to multiply this by 100. And that's going to give us a percentage. Then we'll have the string afterwards. And the string is just going to have the actual percent sign. And we'll do our plus. So that's what this should look like. Now my code is a little bit different inside of here. We can see I use integers. So what I'll do is I'll run this here. And if you wanted to, you could debug it by starting it right here and then just go through and see how things increment. But we can run it right here and see if that worked. So we'll compare it. We'll press submit here. We passed 4 out of 4 tests with this code. So this is the code where I use the integers. This is the one where I use the just double and I cast it as an int. So a little bit simpler. Let's see if I can get rid of these brackets also, since it's just a single line in the for loop. We'll try to run it, and it works. So this is a little bit simpler way to write it. You could put some comments in here to make it nicer to read, but we can see that we get the same thing. So 40, 75, 162.5. And now let's try to successfully run it and or practice it. So I'll just paste this all in here. You can see it got a little bit smaller. That's just a better way to write the code. And we passed 4 out of 4 tests, so it's solid. This is the code that I use to solve for this problem, practice the exercise 6.18, which is plusScores.